Some budget and staffing updates to start with, and then our staffing and budget adjustments. And then we'll talk about our single federal audit report that came in late this season, tied back to what we approved last fall from our auditors. Then we'll talk a little bit about the board budget, and then close off with a conversation around how to structure the content for the levy survey update.
All right. First up is the 2026-27 budget and staffing updates.
So our team, sorry.
Do we want to, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just kind of set the stage. So, we've got several items that are going to fall underneath the overall budget conversation, and I just want to start by sharing and acknowledging just some of what we heard tonight, and obviously a lot of the emails that have been coming into the board. We are in a really challenging situation where we are having to make some really tough decisions, and it doesn't get taken lightly, the type of feedback that we hear from our community, hear from board members, and hear from our own staff and from our own dialogues as an administrative team. We have met with all of our building principals to have deep discussions with them as to the types of conversations that they are having at the building level, to identify where they anticipate they can make recommendations for making adjustments. And as I've stated, that these conversations are really putting us in a precarious position of choosing between what is good for our students and what is good for our students. And that's just a really difficult place to be. And I would also say and acknowledge that everything that we do in this district, no matter if it's from district services or to school-based services, everything comes back to touching an impact of a student in our classrooms. And some are closer than others, but nonetheless, we know that when we optimize resources, sometimes that means that we also impact some of the types of programs or positions that people really find value in. And that's kind of a challenge too, because we kind of have a little bit of a dialectic in terms of how we have competing priorities for the same thing, all for the betterment of our kids. And I just want to thank our staff in advance for tough work that they've been leaning into, really tough decisions that we'll be continuing to review as a team. As with all of our study sessions, these are conversations that we like to walk away learning some perspectives from the board and our broader discussion. And sometimes those conversations allow us to think about things from a different vantage point or other perspectives that we may have overlooked or maybe not taken as high of value as some of the conversations that we'll have tonight, which gives us an opportunity to go back and revisit some conversations as needed. Doesn't always happen, but it's something that we value with our study sessions that we have with the board. And so tonight our team will walk through different scenarios that we've talked about with regards to some of the staffing components. We'll talk a little bit about some of our projected enrollment that we see in the ebbs and flows of that, because a lot of our conversations we are seeing as a direct result of our overall enrollment, as we know, has for many years continued to decline. And that's not going to be something that will change anytime soon in the state of Minnesota. It's a phenomenon that many districts are contending with. And we also know that, with lower enrollment, coupling that with registration, particularly at the secondary, that we have to make different decisions as to what the demands that students have on certain electives, et cetera. So we'll make adjustments accordingly, that we do that every year. Elementary also has had some really tough conversations too. Our elementary schools, largely with the enrollment and consolidations of taking one of our schools offline, if you will, and repurposing it and redistributing staff and our students into other campuses, that's also having an overall impact on our elementary enrollment and what we ultimately need to have in terms of overall sections in our school. And so trying to ensure that we're aligning our staffing to the targets that we have established at the elementary. And then at the secondary, really protecting overall class sizes. We don't have targets like we do at the elementary at the secondary level, but we know that there are some ranges that we'd like to try to uphold, and that we also can talk about some of the minimum conversations as well. And that is something that is a portion of our secondary conversations as well. So just want to set the context for that, and now I'll turn it over to Director Ryder, who will walk us through the first couple of topics.
Yeah, so to begin, we'll look at the kindergarten enrollment, as we have been each meeting, each work session. And the kindergarten enrollment, as you can see on the materials that are in the board packet, it does show that we're still hovering around that 487, 489 projected number based on the number of enrollments we've received thus far for next fall. Acknowledging and understanding the fact that many families may not have yet just taken that step and anticipating that to be the case. However, given the fact that that 487, 489 number is off by about 40 from what we had originally put into our projections, and that is included in our previous calculations on the 5-year projections for 26-27, I have adjusted within one of the buckets, which is the revenue bucket for the $200,000 that we'll talk about in a few minutes. There is an adjustment there that includes a removal of 40 students from the kindergarten count as a precaution in planning for next year. Now, we're going to keep monitoring that because I think it's a little soon to be for sure, right? But as we get closer and closer, there's going to be a point in time where the models that the state puts out for the revenue projection model for 26-27, as well as the what-if model and the special education models, those are going to come out to us to use as tools. And as they do, then I'll be rerunning these numbers again to make sure then that what we're still looking at for the revenue side of things for the 26-27 looks appropriate. But just calculated preliminarily what that number might look like and be adjusted, and we can talk about that when we get to that slide. But just know that that kindergarten number technically still is the 529. However, I'm accounting for possibly 40 less, just in case. And if there's no other questions on that topic, I will move to the podium. Go ahead.
Is there questions, discussions on that?
Yeah, so I sent in a question about, sorry, is my mic on? Oh, no. Okay, sorry, I sent in a question about, can you give us any, as we're talking about reductions based on enrollment, can you give us any input into where our numbers are coming in for elementary, middle, and high school based on, like, compared to last year as far as where we're seeing enrollment?
Yep. Just give me a second here. Oops. Let's see. See this?
That's hard to see that.
A little larger. How's that? Is that better? A little bit more?
A little bit more. There you go.
Okay.
Now we're cooking.
So this is the model that we worked with for revising the 25-26 revised budget. And in addition, then the numbers that were projected for 26-27 and beyond that were used in our 5-year projections to date, okay? And so you can see, for example, in the highlighted yellows there for the kindergarten, that right now we're functioning off from 520, and looking at 26-27, that's that 529 number. That's the 529 number I'm saying might just come in at 489 instead, okay? So given that, the conversation is that the kindergarten through 5th grade, the question is, how does that compare to where we're at right now? So looking at K through 5, we are like really close, within 2 counts of the numbers that we show you on the enrollment reports and that I looked at for last Friday. And the fact of the matter is that that's a head count compared to this being anticipated to be our average daily membership. Those are distinctly different, so I want to point that out, because the average daily membership is going to take into consideration students who might start with us and then leave partly through the year or vice versa. And so you have partials there. So you're going to calculate all those together and come up with an average daily membership in total, and that's what our funding is based off from. But on a regular basis, we're looking at the counts so that you can kind of sense whether or not we're okay, or are we falling behind there. When you look at the middle level, which is 6th, 7th, 8th grade, those are close. They're about 10 different right now on the count versus the ADM. A little lower than the ADM is showing, but again, that could come through still for us with the total calculation at the end of the year. On the greens, which is our secondary 9 through 12, those numbers then are coming in a little lower on the count, as we would anticipate oftentimes, and it is progressively becoming a greater number, that our 9 through 12 decline in the second semester compared to the rest of the year. And it's better seen on the enrollment report that you get on a monthly basis, where you can kind of see month to month how that compared. And if you look and compare that to the previous years, it's something to keep an eye on, right? But we're about 22 different right now, okay? So when you look at, I think the second part of the question was, okay, so these are the subsets. I'm trying to get where you can see them. And let me make this bigger. We're going to focus just now on the totals of these numbers. So, current year 25-26, and then the next column over to the right is the 26-27. So for K-5, these are the comparative numbers for the ADMs, average daily memberships, that we are currently budgeting for the current year as well as projecting for next year. This does include the extra 40 kids that we might choose to decline that for the K-5 moving forward into 26-27, but at this point in time, that is included. Okay?
Thank you, that's helpful.
Yes.
So basically, we're not seeing any big significant swings of enrollment.
Of the current year, no.
I mean, as people have enrolled for the next year, for 25-26.
Yeah, right, so the unknown number is the kindergarten number, right? And that's because they just all haven't, come in and enrolled. So we want to watch that one for sure. And that's the one I want to kind of hang out as long as I can before we set our assumption for sure for next year. But I am anticipating the need to potentially reduce our revenue slightly for that purpose.
But we see an increase in the high school level, 9 to 12, is that correct?
The high school is showing an increase, but keep in mind, thank you for that, because this is ADMs,
Right.
okay? So when you're talking post-secondary enrollment options, PSEO, if we are working through an income contract, say with Normandale or another institute, we are receiving the full aid, but we're paying the bill.
Right,
Okay? So our challenge is always trying to make sure that we are understanding kind of that, what does that number look like for how many students might be anticipating that PSEO option for themselves, whether it's full-time or whether it's just onesie, twosies here or there. Oftentimes that increases in the second semester, so it is a balance, and it's something that you have to kind of just gauge. My concern for us is just that number seems to be increasing each year, which is really positive for kids and their families. For us, it means though, have we overstaffed anticipating they're going to register, and they have registered and they're staying with us in our seats, in our classrooms, and then they choose not to. And then we might have more staffing than what was necessary. But that's kind of that's the ebb and flow of that, right? So I'm suggesting that the 9 through 12 number may not be the number of students that we are actually serving in our seats, but that is the number of students that we are projecting for 9-12.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion or questions for Director Ryder on this topic? Hearing none, we will move on to the next item, which is the staffing and budget adjustment. Oh, no, single federal audit report.
Well, first we're here.
That's right? Okay. Thank you.
So I'll start us off, and then Director Cawthorn will join us on some slides related to staffing. This information that we've seen this is an overview of our budget adjustments that we have been working on for the last few months, our guiding priorities in driving those decisions, and our next steps. So the board-approved budget priorities has been front and center for us in taking a look at what we need to do. We understand that these are the guidelines the board has provided us, and primarily around the academic excellence as well as the resource optimization. As we take a look at the historical budget adjustments for the last 3 years, this is a repeat slide, these are, but I think it's important again to make note of the fact that this is the 3rd year that we're looking at over $4 million in reductions, and that is wearing on us, as you have heard from our community members, as well as what we are hearing in the whole process, right? It's just, where else do we go? How else do we make this work? So that is a factor that I think is prevalent and important for us to note and consider as we move into the further conversation tonight. We spoke earlier about the budget alignment overview and the fact that we had created what we call 6 buckets here. This was a way for us to try and identify where some of those reductions may be coming from and grouping them in such a way that it makes sense. As we were beginning the process, I kept hearing quite a bit about the consolidation and then the elementary, and the reality is some of the conversations that happened, say, last spring around consolidation included a much broader perspective of, you know, custodians that were in the building, social workers and special ed staff and teaching staff and principal and other support staff, right? So, as mentioned, the elementary site consolidation is really looking at the instructional folks, okay? And they are included in the elementary, and as a result of that consolidation and the boundary changes and everything that took place, there was significant effort and work put into making sure every single student that was identified at a school changing schools, every record was reviewed. And in that process, then we were working with numbers at each school site so that we could know by grade level exactly what we're anticipating there, okay? So again, the one area that we're not yet for sure on is the kindergarten number, right? And then there is the assumption that our first graders through 5th graders will be our students that we currently have moving forward. They're going to roll up the next year, okay? So if decisions are made by families to do something different, then that will possibly impact our numbers, but that is the assumptions made. As we have our estimated numbers then for our grade levels at each of our school sites for the elementary, a process was made to calculate then what is the appropriate number of sections based on the targets that were not changed from prior years. Once we had completed that conversation, then we really moved into the whole, what now are we going to do with the other parts of our budget? And trying to think through what's the appropriate level of ask from the various different levels of our system, taking a look at the number of students that we have enrolled in our elementaries in our projections, and what we had just worked through with all the elementary sites. We applied that proportionately to the student counts for the middle and for the high school. And that's how those numbers were derived, okay? Beyond that, then it was a matter of taking a look at the difference there of how much of the 4.15 have we not yet met, and dividing that up among these other areas, leaving a bucket at the end with the under review, because as we were doing all this process, we were also hearing rumblings, and now it's become more and more information has been revealed regarding compensatory, which there is a study underway, and they have completed their preliminary report, and I'll talk more about that in another slide, so I won't go too deep, but that's going to make a change in our revenues. We know there potentially could be a change in our kindergarten numbers if we go that route in making that assumption. And additionally, under review, we knew that there was a potential that we had understated on our special education revenue for 27 and beyond. So in that process, you'll hear more about that as we get to that bucket and that discussion. But that is kind of on its own over there because there was a lot of conversation happening and still is happening that we wanted to be able to come back to and revisit and review. And typically, that is the case. When you're doing a budget for the new year, you are last minute always taking a last run through the revenues to make sure you haven't missed anything and that things are still looking the way you would expect. I think that covers everything on that slide.
All right, we're going to move into some discussion now around the next few slides. And some of the recap I will be giving on these slides is going to be high level because we have an understanding that there's going to be discussion and questions around this. So we just want to give an understanding of the slides and then allow the time needed for that. So just understand that that's why it's more of the high level of the recap of what these slides are going over. And also, as previously mentioned, the staffing recommendations that our building leaders and department leads are recommending aren't easy ones. After looking at some of the areas to staff more efficiently, these next few slides are going to be the recommendations after numerous staffing meetings that took place over the last several months. One thing that I do want to mention is that when seeing the reductions at each of these areas, please keep in mind that due to bargain contracts as well as staff seniority, the recommended reduction is not a one-to-one correlation to staff member or members in those roles. The individuals affected by these recommendations will come to the board for approval at the April 13th board meeting. So we're going to start with elementary. And when you look at the elementary level reductions of the 1.69 million, that reduction was done by looking at enrollment and then staffing each building to the board targets, in most cases not needing 4 sections at every grade level at every school, as well as the repurposing of Westwood School that comes with its reductions as well, and some of those reductions are listed above. Moving on to the middle school slide. The middle school recommendation stems from a combination of trying to find efficiencies in staffing based off enrollment projections, student registration, as well as trying to minimize the impact of class size of the core subjects. And those are the recommendations from the middle school standpoint. High school. The high school recommendations stem from a combination of trying to find efficiencies in staffing based off student selections during registration and trying to have similar class sizes where possible amongst core subjects and electives as well. And those are the high school recommendations. If we look on to the next one, which is athletics and activities, athletics and activities recommendations stem from a combination of trying to find efficiencies in activities based off participation levels in specific activities and adjusting stipends where necessary, as well as looking into transportation costs and shuttles that the athletic and activities department has been providing. And then in our DSC bucket, I'll let Director Ryder start with that one, and then I'll come back at the tail end.
Thank you. So the district service center is identified with the 800,000, but I want to caution the fact that that is really meant to be more district services and district-wide services, right? Because our district service center houses many departments. And so what you will find is when we talked about earlier, where did the Westwood custodial positions go? Custodians are managed more centrally with regard to how they're assigned to the buildings and that process. So that's under the district service center. Special education and those needs are going to be listed here on this slide here. First, for some of the retirements and such that there exist related to special education and the net savings. So we know that they're going to get replaced, so we're not taking the full amount, but rather the net savings there. In addition, the transportation's another area. It's more district-wide. It's managed through departments within the district service center. And then we have as we close this building, there is some insurance savings, of course, because we won't need to insure this building. There's also utility savings, but that is not listed here because those utility budget dollars are needed for utilities in general. So there's not room to necessarily reduce them. And then there's some net department budget reductions. The other bucket under review, as I mentioned, the net additional aid is a combo of plus on the special education aid, a subtraction for compensatory aid of about 163 right now that's being calculated, 163,000, and a subtraction for the kindergarten positions, kindergarten enrollment numbers. So the net difference there is an add to the budget to help us of 608,116. At the same time, in the process of reviewing our special education positions, we know that there is a need that has, in many cases in the last couple of years, been managed by moving various different supports to other different programs. And we've done a pretty decent job of doing that, but this year, there's an anticipation that we are going to need 2 positions that are teaching level position and 5 para positions in support of center-based programming as well as transitions throughout the district. So removing that from the 608 revenue is then that net additional total net revenue of 203,502 that you see there. Our target was making sure we had 200,000 to add to the pot of these reductions, or in some cases, adding the revenue. The compensatory aid, I want to talk a little bit about that. That task force that has completed their preliminary report, they had a special meeting of the Minnesota Association of School Business Officials, and there's strong encouragement for districts to continue to collect and encourage all families to complete the application for educational benefits form. Although they are still planning on the direct certifications that happen at the county level to be the means for the compensatory to be calculated, there are many other reasons for us to have that application for educational benefits form. In fact, today we had a letter received from MDE that indicated they're looking at that for the literacy incentive aid in the future. So making sure we have a good handle on understanding our population of families we're serving and those that might be eligible for free or reduced income adjustments, regardless of what's happening with the food service program, that form is necessary for us to be able to establish those numbers. They are used in title funding, E-rate funding, the Minnesota State High School League, and the and other grants as well. The plea also during that conversation with MDE was for us to discuss with our legislators and ask for them to include, once again, the class size reduction as an allowable use of compensatory funds. And actually, this is coming from MASBO. So for us, it's that 161,834 reduction that's anticipated right now on the compensatory funds. They are asking, and they just asked a survey to be completed, which I filled out ours, asking for a hold harmless for 27. We've had one for compensatory hold harmless for 25 and 26. Since the task force has not yet completed their work, the ask is that they continue that through 27 so that we can see the results of that task force and know then what that means to many districts. And then our last slide.
Yeah, so these are just some of the dates you've been given in the past as well, and not, no changes there from what's going to be happening over the next few months. One of the things I did want to share is I know at the last study session, we kind of talked a little bit about, and being new, I wanted to try to find some historical context, in the district. When is the district numbers kind of looked what our numbers are looking at? And the best thing I could find was 2017, our enrollment was about 8,386, and our staff head count was 1,098. Right now, we're at 8,568 in enrollment and a staff count of 1,131. So a few hundred more students and about 33 more staff. When I'm looking towards next year, the 26-27, when we look at enrollment and head count, I feel that the enrollment's going to be, probably around where that 2017 number was, and I believe our staff head count will be below that 1,098 where we were 10 years ago. And two, I just want to talk a little bit about kind of from the, when we look at what I refer to as the Learning Leaders Group here in Prior Lake. Right now, we're at 36, which is kind of a combination of, directors and principals and that kind of group. We'll be down 1 next year, so we'll be at 35. And from our admin assistant group, we'll be down to 49.5 next year, which is a reduction of 3.5. just to give you some perspective again from 10 years ago where we were at. Now, titles have changed, of course, over 10 years, but when you kind of just look at duties and roles and responsibilities of that group, of what the Learning Leaders Group might have looked like 10 years ago, there was 32 at that point in time on the Learning Leaders Group, and we had 54 administrative assistants. Now, when I started looking and comparing jobs from 10 years ago, like I said, the titles have changed, but the duties have probably stayed the same. And the difference in the three that I could come up with, and I just want to share those with you to kind of give you an understanding of where that increase in three would be coming from. One would be our Emergency Preparedness Coordinator, and I think everybody understands that the last 10 years, school safety has definitely changed, and the need for a role like that in this kind of district is warranted. The other one would be our Health Services Coordinator. The same thing, once again, as the district has, had more students with more health needs, and our special ed has increased, as well as, any number of things. We have more nurses at the schools. There's a need for somebody to kind of run that group. And then the third one being an operational supervisor. And just as we've taken on more school buildings, larger square footage of school buildings, we've needed to add, additional staff in that regards, and so to have somebody oversee that group. So that would be the three additional folks in our kind of Learning Leaders Group that we have right now that would be different than what it was 10 years ago. So to me, when we look at where we're going to be next year compared to that 16-17 school year, we're pretty much right in line from our Learning Leaders Group, and then also a reduction of 4.5 admin assistants from where we were 10 years ago. So I just wanted to try to give some perspective to the board to help you understand, that, we wanted to try to give as much equal comparison as we could when we're looking through these staffing areas. And other than that, we will now open it up.
Thank you for that additional perspective based on 10 years ago, too. I think we've heard over the years just the increased needs of our students in many different ways, so I appreciate that additional context. With that being said, we'll open it up for discussion and questions from board members.
Chair. Sorry.
Director
Go ahead,
Olson.
Smith. Can I recommend, since we're looking at different buckets, can we go bucket by bucket? Would that make sense? Or I don't know how everybody feels about that, but just.
I think that's
would that-
helpful.
Okay. Can we do that?
Yeah,
Is that
please.
okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Director Smith, I stepped on you, so.
Well,
go
if
ahead.
we're going bucket by bucket, I'm gonna pass on this one right now if there's any other questions from folks.
Okay.
Anybody have any questions or comments on the first bucket? The site consolidation.
Yeah, I wonder, sorry.
Yeah, please.
Yes. I wonder if, I think for the benefit of our community too, when you talk about savings contingency that's on the different slides, would you mind,
Sure.
plain language saying what that means?
Yes, it's a little confusing there. But we wanted to reflect it, and here's what this is about. So as we take a look at the budget, there are a couple of phases, right? So the first phase is to review positions, FTEs across the system, right? And as we're taking a look at those FTEs, that is, a 1.0 or some combination of it, right? And along with that then comes an immediate, for me, dollar amount that kind of helps me understand what that might be, right? However, when we worked through this with each level, the fact of the matter is, once we knew the FTEs, we had to go to the second phase, which was, what does that mean for people? And that's where HR steps in and reviews what it is we have for licensures, what does it look like for seniority, what contracts are they under, and that whole scenario. Once that's done, then we had our controller and, I'm sorry, I don't remember what Rachel's position is. Senior specialist. There we go. So both Rachel and Andrea, they work together to cost it. I might be seeing there's a position here, but if that position is going to be actually one where they're shifting to another location, but somebody else is going to be the actual net savings, then that's what we needed to cost. Does that make sense? So in this process, you come up with the FTEs, you come up with the costing, and sometimes that costing is above or below. In this case, in elementary, you see a savings contingency for district needs of 198,744. That means that there's that much then to address, should there be any hotspots as we move forward or other needs at the elementary level to accommodate that if we were still looking to have the 1.69 be our marker, right? So that's a little bit of, I don't know, some might say cushion for the whole process, right? Because we've got a ways to go from here to June when you approve the budget.
Absolutely.
Additionally, just taking note of the fact that we did put in a plan as well that allows for 2 FTE for contingency at the elementary level, knowing that there may be some hotspots between now and fall.
I appreciate that because, you know, you can make the best plans possible and there's always hot spots, I feel like. So thank you for doing that. Any other comments or questions on that first bucket? Director Johnson?
Yes, so my question more might be better or helpful with Director Powers. So we got a range as far as with the consolidation, 425, I think to 650, something like that, as far as renovations. So that would be one. Do we have a more finite number on what that's going to be? And two, this one would probably be maybe addressed for you. If we are looking at 40 less kindergartners next year, and everything that you've showed us in the past, it doesn't look like we're going to continue with any gaining enrollment. We're going to be looking at closing another school here shortly. And I think that would be the one to go, would obviously be the one that we would be renovating. And if we are really looking at that, we should consider how much renovation we're actually going to do with that. If it's safety concerns, right, something like that, entry, security, IT, sure. But if we're building and tearing down, we should be looking at using that money somewhere else.
So it's 450 we're using.
Yeah, I was going to hold the renovations at no more than 450. I was just going to put that as the cap, and there will be things that won't be done. I'm hoping that will take care of most of the most pressing need for the renovation is actually going to be the heating and air conditioning accommodations to put office spaces in those particular sections of the school.
But we are talking about Greenwood for those renovations. And that is where community educations will be housed, as well as then services currently housed here at the DSC will move there. We will also have the transitions program that will be new there. And I think that's it, right? So given that, though, those renovations to that building, if you were to close an elementary school, that would not be one of the remaining 6 schools we're functioning with. Right?
Okay, tracking.
So then then I get a little lost as to
I guess
what concerns are there.
my question would be, if we're looking, right, based on enrollment, we're gonna have to continue to cut, which we all know that we are. Eventually, the conversation's gonna come up for a building closure again, or it could. And if it does, we should look at the building where our staff is, and then just the staff, not necessarily the amount of students, right? To minimize the impact on the most amount of students.
I think I get what you're looking at.
Yeah.
One of the parts I think might be we want to add to that, if we're actually looking at enrollment declining to the point where we actually would look at closing out of the school, we would actually physically be closing another school and not necessarily be looking at moving district services. We could, but if we were going to be closing an additional school because we didn't have enough students for there, it would be one of the remaining locations. And I would have a recommendation at that point if we ever got to that.
Okay.
The kindergarten numbers not coming in at this point in time, I want to again reassert the fact that that may be families just choosing not to make that a priority at the moment. And yet it also might be that our projections are just slightly off on that. We rely on birth numbers for our community, for our county, as well as then how many of them will we hang on to. In listening to some of the dialogue that's happening outside my door, when it comes to families communicating with us about enrollments, I am hearing that I have a kindergartner that could come, but I think I'm gonna hold them one more year. They need a little bit more prep. And so that is something else that we're hearing more of now than we did maybe a year ago, according to staff. Not surprising necessarily either.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate the insight into that.
Anyone else? You're all set?
Not yet.
Okay.
It's swirling.
Just a quick general question. On the total savings, are those total salary amounts, or are they inclusive of like benefits and?
Yeah, so when we did the calculation for, when you're talking personnel,
Yeah.
we are including the benefits in those numbers. Yep.
Chair Boyan, I'm sorry, I remembered now. On the elementary site, when you say a net reduction of the 14, I know there was the, talk of the media specialists and things like that. Where is that calculated?
Go ahead.
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, once again, this is where it comes into play, like I said, the whole one-to-one is difficult here. Because a lot of our current media specialists, hold K-12 elementary license along with their media license as well. So when you have to then go through the contractual process of placing those teachers back into classrooms, then the impact is on other, classroom teachers, elementary classroom teachers. So that shift is calculated into that net reduction.
And the net reduction that we're seeing there is also related to like how many sections are needed.
Sure.
Okay, so as we consolidated, the number of sections that are necessary for our enrollment for next year are less than they were in the previous year as well.
Anybody else on this bucket? Dr. Jackson?
Yes, thank you. So two things. So just so I'm clear, you said that other staff at Westwood that would be considered more support staff, like the custodians, the health aide, perhaps noon supervisor, social worker, those cuts are reflected in DSC, is that correct?
The
In DSC
custodians,
slide?
sorry. Yes, the custodians are, and they are reflected in the DSC bucket. The health aide is a position that moved to the transition program, so it's not removed. The noon supervisor positions are positions that among the elementary schools are all in flux at the moment as to like which sites are gonna need how many people in the lunchrooms to help support that. And so that'll be shifting amongst the schools. Although a savings is anticipated there, that we will not need as many, the fact of the matter is it's too soon for us to really know. There's a lot of openings right now too, so people will just kind of shift into those. But that's one of those things that the savings that we experience we'll see come through in next year's budget, We're not gonna count on it right now, on the noon supervisors.
So there perhaps may be some positions that don't get filled,
Right.
that you'll
Correct.
see a cost savings. Okay.
Yes, yep.
So, what's interesting, when you look at the class size, Westwood, one of the beautiful things why people love Westwood is it had really small class sizes. A lot of the classes were 20, 21, and so when you take those students and you spread them out to the other schools, I guess my question is, and I'm sure you've looked at this for the K through 5, with all the different teachers that were employed at Westwood, will the majority of them be placed in other schools, or does this 14 FTE account for any changes in, for example, like, let's say, I'm just gonna use this for example, like, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if JP has a first grade class of 22, and now they have, 25, right? You don't necessarily need another teacher, even though we don't love those numbers. I don't know the class, I don't have the class size caps in front of me either. But I'm assuming, one, we're not exceeding that class size cap with any of these. And then my original question goes back to spreading these teachers out throughout the district.
Yeah, so your assumption is correct. I mean, those teachers will be placed into openings that we would have throughout the district, and those openings would be attributed to other staff that then come on the 13th that you would see on either the non-renew list or the ULA list in regards to that. So that's where you have to kind of go through that contractual process to see seniority, kind of see where all the teachers are at seniority-wise, and then those teachers that have more seniority are granted a position within the district.
So that's where we will see a 14 FTE, is because of seniority, is what you're saying? Yep. Okay, that helps for me to understand that.
And just a note that as we approach the elementary, because of the boundary changes and how that affected so many different students changing schools as well, the fact is we kind of started over there, where it's like we started with what are our counts now at each grade level, how many sections based on the target size would that look like, and then from there, determine the number of sections and FTEs, and then HR goes to the people and tries to figure that part out.
Right, okay.
Moving on to the next bucket. Middle school. Questions or discussion items on this slide?
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So we've talked a lot about, at this table, these choices being, what is good versus what is good, and that there are no easy cuts left. And obviously, we've heard quite a bit from our community and students and families regarding some of the decisions on this particular bucket. I guess, can you just give us, the board, the community, some of the examples of maybe what these adjustments make possible? Maybe speak to the options that were considered. Again, giving the timing and everything that's going on, I don't know how possible that is. But, obviously these trade-offs, when we're looking at them, we have to take into account whether or not there's going to be equal or greater harm to students and staff. So, given the pleas from the community, I just want to know, is it likely that, if it's not Spanish immersion and choir, is it a different cross-section of our community that's in here tonight upset about something that is being cut? So.
So I'll share a little bit. The middle school, one of the areas that they're really trying to focus in on is, similar to the elementary, is trying to look at class size averages in the core classes, our math, science, social studies, and English. So yes, there is a bit of a teeter-totter effect that if we pivot from one area of reduction, that we will likely uplift another concerned aspect, of something that's very valuable to our overall district. So making these types of decisions at the middle school allows our class size averages to be right around that 33 to 33 and a half. Otherwise, I think we would be ballooning out to about 35 to 36. And then, so for example, compared to the number of students, naturally from the immersion, for example, the numbers of students that go from the elementary immersion into the middle school, there is some reduction that occurs in that transition. Current numbers are 129 students in grades 6 through 8, and that's being supported by 1.8 FTE. So the ratio to FTE is very low compared to what you typically see into that 160 range. So that's part of the dilemma that they were trying to wrestle with, to look at the inequities in class size on the core compared to some of the impacts of keeping that. We know that students are forced to make choices as they go into middle school. So that's some of the factors that go into that as well. Let's see, other perspectives. There is support currently with the Amity intern that is to be determined. With some of the federal changes, there is some significant concerns as to the affordability of that intern continuing. So we,
what?
we have an intern with the immersion program, the Amity intern, and due to the changes in the visa structure, with significant costs and fees, the likelihood of that happening is now being called into question. So we could look at other alternative options. So for example, German and French, this is a conversation that we had both at the middle school as well as the high school, just looking at the sheer numbers of what's happening in there. Some natural attrition happening in terms of the registration for those courses. Again, 129 students in the Spanish immersion, and then in French and German, there's 152 students in grades 7 and 8. So that is some other, conversations that, they've had at the site level as well. Yeah, I guess that's all I would have to add to that. And I know Principal Kubushek is here. I don't know if there's something I might have left out that kind of capture the essence of a lot of the discussion that your leadership teams are having. And then obviously, we did a significant administrative reduction upon a retirement 2 years ago. Joe has done an outstanding job managing and leading that entire campus. And so the auxiliary supports of assistant principals, administrative support as well, that would not be something that we could really look at without then, if we cut those, I don't think we would be able to maintain just one principal that floats. And so then we would probably look at increasing costs of administration. And then I know that we had, I think that's kind of the only other thing I think I would share in terms of context.
Director France?
So first of all, with any of the cuts, I want to recognize that some people are losing their job, and that's pretty serious. It's also very personal. But I also want to know the cost-benefit analysis of, we're trying to grow our elementary Spanish immersion, Lowell del Lago, and we know that is a huge attractive program to not only in-district but open-enrolled students. The residual effect upon that program by losing middle school immersion, has anyone estimated the added cost and potentially loss in revenue to that program as a result of this decision? Is there any balance?
Yeah, I mean, that's a bit unknown, but it's a point very well taken. And that has been our vision for the program, is to look at ways that we can maintain that as an icon program as well as an attractant or a magnet, so to speak. And again, as we hear the conversation tonight to see where, we may make additional adjustments, that's something that our team is, able to go back and do. But you're getting our thinking in terms of other cost mitigation and programmatic, like just in terms of upholding the management of a school conversation. But definitely that conversation in terms of a cost benefit, would we essentially choke the program? That is something that is of concern. It's something that we understand it is a potential reality. And that is something that we also know is a possibility that we've had conversations back in our 24 levy campaign as well. So this is something that we were going to cut then, and we said, no, we got to keep this thing going. That was one of the two things that we did not do as a result of that levy not passing. Should we go for another levy in that conversation? We would anticipate this would be something that would be a likely investment potential for a future levy as well. So yes, we've looked at that from couple of different vantage points, and certainly your point is well taken.
Can I ask a question, just a clarifying question on, so sixth grade immersion, what does that look like? What does that look like compared to elementary school? And then when this slide is eliminate the 7th and 8th grade immersion social studies, if you can paint a clear picture
Sure.
for the board and the community at large, I think that'd be helpful, as well as understanding the options for Spanish classes still being offered, just so that there's a full kind of picture about what this proposed reduction looks like.
Thank you, Board Chair Bullion. Currently, what our immersion program looks like is for our sixth grade students, they have social studies in Spanish, and then they also have a Spanish language arts class. Same thing is true in 7th and 8th grade. The difference is in 7th grade, social studies is a half-year class, and so it doesn't turn out being 2 hours of their day. It ends up being 1 hour of their day in 6th grade. But in 7th and 8th grade, it's 2 hours of their day are currently in Spanish. One of them is the social studies class. One of them is their Spanish language arts. Under this proposal, that would eliminate all of the 6th grade. In 7th and 8th grade, the students would lose the immersion social studies, but would continue to have the opportunity to have a language, just like all of our 7th and 8th graders have an opportunity to have a language. So, and just, I do have one point of clarification based off of something Dr. Thomas mentioned. I just want to add, he had mentioned about the Amity intern. I just want to make sure that it's clear. The Amity intern is actually paid for by our immersion parents. That is not a district cost. But we have been lucky enough to have 2 immersion Amity interns, one each of the last 2 years, and then Dr. Thomas shared about the potential challenges for coming year, but I just wanted to clarify that that's not a district cost. That's being paid for by our parents.
Thank you for that clarification.
Another question?
France hasn't, sure.
Okay. So, and first of all, I'm just as concerned about all the other cuts. I want to make that clear. But I am kind of curious with the number of advanced speakers coming out of Lalo del Lago, plus native speakers, and having been part of these programs, just because somebody's a native speaker doesn't mean they're reading and writing correct grammar, et cetera. And they often take, obviously, classes in their native language to become grammatically and literary prolific. You know, we currently have Spanish elective at 6th grade, I believe.
No,
No,
we
we
do.
don't.
We do not offer any language for any 6th graders currently, other than the students who are in the immersion program. The other students besides the immersion program have an opportunity to start a language in 7th grade.
Okay. Even with that year skip to mitigate, and hopefully we will eventually get funding from the community to fund our education programs in this district. But, you know, to mitigate that, is there a way to kind of take the normal Spanish program and have an advanced class just dedicated to people who aren't in beginner Spanish and
So-
all that, to keep the program going forward, period?
Yeah, the plan with this is that the 7th and 8th graders would be in a separate Spanish course, similar to what they're in now with their Spanish language arts. We would not be putting them with our regular students who are in Spanish 1 or Spanish 2. They would be in a class just for our immersion students, so that may also include some of our native speakers.
Could sixth graders be in that class?
The challenge with that is the way the schedule works.
Okay.
There's no place
That's
that
what I thought you'd
fits
say.
into their schedule.
Okay, that's what I was getting at.
Sixth grade schedule is very tight.
All right.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other questions for,
A couple questions first. So the one elective FTE, what subject is that being reduced? I just know that the electives in middle school aren't really electives.
So the answer is multiple.
Okay.
So there's reductions within our regular Spanish, our regular French and German are also included in that, as well as, yeah, I think that's it.
Okay. The Atlas programming, I believe the way that that works is like there's only 12-ish students accepted into that, and I think there's like an application process, I'm not really sure, but how will those students be supported
Yeah,
going
that's a great
forward?
question. So, yes, the Atlas program is for our current 7th and 8th graders. We have every year between 10 and 12 students in 7th grade, 10 and 12 students in 8th grade, so 20 to 24 students based on a year. Currently, those students, again, what that is, it's students that are identified. We do have an application process. They meet with the teachers, whether they be identified by a parent, be identified by teacher, counselor, whoever that might be, as a student that might struggle in a traditional class setting. A lot of that aligns with some of the ALC work that we do at the high school level. And so our ALC application is actually done with both the Shakopee School District and the Burnsville School District. They do not have a program like the Atlas program. Instead, what they do is they do different things within their regular classes through differentiation. And so that's one of the things I've started to work with the director in Shakopee, Eric Serbus, at the ALC to get a little bit better understanding of what they do within their regular classes, and then that's also then included within the regular FTE.
Okay, so they will be supported within the classroom?
They would be
and
supported
that
within the
class
traditional
offset is
general education
reflected?
class, correct?
I mean, my last point is around middle school immersion. I'm adamantly opposed to this cut, and I would ask the board to consider some other means on the administration. Having gone through the immersion program when my kids were young, this is not just like a simple FTE reduction. This is an entire program. This is an entire community that comes here, and this is a magnet program that draws people to this district. It will have definitely adverse impacts to our enrollment. And yeah, we made a commitment to grow this by moving it into Westwood and trying to grow the program. I appreciate that there's 130 students registered, but I would also point out that these classes, this current 6th graders, 7th graders, and 5th graders, were the ones that were heavily impacted by COVID. They're going into kindergarten, 1st grade, so like my family, many of the families in immersion at that time who were not in person did not choose immersion because they weren't in person. So this will grow from here on out. We're seeing our lowest numbers in these grades. I just think it's a huge mistake to cut this. And these families are heavily invested. They take, I believe, health and PE outside of extra hours to make this schedule work. Yeah, I mean, they have, you know, again, their PTCs are extremely strong, hiring the interns, so supportive of our school, and I think you're gonna lose enrollment. I think it's a big mistake to cut this program. You know, again, I think looking at even, no cut is fun, but I think there are other options to consider. We have French and German. I think there was like 70-some students in each, right? That's not something people come to this district for necessarily, even though it's a great option. You know, I think that just, again, looking at our overall enrollment in the community and in immersion, it would be detrimental. And even cutting it for 2 years, even if it does come back, you cannot come back to immersion after a year or two being gone. You cannot. And these students cannot take general Spanish classes. They're far too advanced. So it might feel like a nice to have, but it's not in our community. It's a magnet program, and I think it's a big mistake to cut it. So that's my opinion. I think we need to look at other options.
Any other, Director Olsted?
Hi, I don't mean to follow that with going backwards, but the Atlas program, when you said a lot of these kids will be helped in the general ed classrooms, I don't understand how that's possible.
So what that's
Or
going to take.
fair.
Yep. Well, what that's going to take is it's going to take some differentiated instruction with our general education teachers, which is something that benefits actually all of our students, not just the students that are identified with our Atlas program, but that's going to be something that we'll be kind of working through what that looks like.
Explain more. What do you mean by that?
Within our general education class, we have the ability we have a range of students' abilities. And it is our responsibility as educators to be able to reach the students that may be at the top in our class and challenge them, have the students in the middle to see what we can do to move them forward, and then we have the students that may be struggling students and how we're going to connect with them. And so when you look at our Atlas students, they may not even, sometimes I think people think they are just struggling students. Many of our Atlas students are actually extremely intelligent students. They just struggle in that setting. So what are we doing with our instruction, right? We don't want to have situations where the students are just sitting and listening for 53 minutes at the middle school level, right? These are middle school students. They need to be moving. They need to be having change every 10 to 15 minutes. Are we doing a different activity? So what are the things that we can do within our classroom to help support those students?
Yeah, that'll be interesting. The core subjects, again, realizing that the number here is not based on, one person necessarily, but what are, anybody explain more about what those
So
adjustments are?
that's a breakdown within each of the 4 subjects. So that's a combination of the
Okay.
reduction within each of the 4 subjects.
Okay,
That's where that 1.6 comes from.
thank you.
Anybody else? Director Atkinson?
Yeah, thank you. So what I think is so ironic is we sit here tonight and we just came off some town hall meetings where our community told us what they value most. And Spanish immersion was one of those programs. And just like Director Mason said, when we were talking about moving it to Westwood, we talked about growing it as it being a magnet program, as it's something special that people come to our district for. And so I was really surprised to see this on here. I was really surprised the eliminate 6th grade and then the change to 7th grade, because to me, that's like completely backwards of what other districts do. And I just took a quick peek at Eden Prairie, where they have a robust 6th grade immersion program, because the kids are coming off of a very solid immersion program in K through 5, and then it gets a little bit more focused and smaller within the 7th and 8th grade. So that, I was very confused about the complete elimination in 6th grade, because I'm just thinking, these kids are, I understand how hard it is to learn a language, and I'm sure they're very proficient when they come out of 5th grade, but missing an entire year of a program and then to jump back in, to me, if we're gonna stand for something, we have to stand for something. And we've seen parents in our district who have really great support of this program. And I even remember sitting here at this board table 3 years ago when I first started, where we had over 100 kinders enrolling into this program. So I agree with what Director Mason said. You're going to continue to see the growth coming out of the Ola Del Lago program. And so I think the numbers that you see, and I think it's 60, correct me if I'm wrong, looking at the class size, there's 60 kids, is that correct? I don't know who would have that number, but 60 kids coming out of the 5th grade class of.
I didn't have that tonight.
Okay, well, anyway, 60 kids who would be coming from the fifth grade Spanish immersion program going into the sixth grade. So the other thing that I really want to level set here is, I understand there's this conversation of if the levy passes, we'll be able to invest back in this program. I think the thing that was really concerning to our community in the past is, this was one of the items that, it was on the list of if the levy passed, we would grow this program. And when people asked, what does that mean? They were told that they were gonna hire a Spanish immersion coordinator. So it wasn't necessarily growing the program, adding teachers, it was adding more administration, which raised some big concerns in our community, because were we really, again, standing behind this program? The other thing is, when we look at well, I'm sorry, that would go back to K through 5. Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly very opposed to these cuts, and mostly because I don't believe it really aligns with what our community values. And when we looked at our board budget priorities, it was very clear that our board budget priorities, when it said to optimize resources, we were talking about streamlining operations, basically, to be able to allocate more resources directly to the classroom instruction and student learning. And so this is a complete contradiction to what the board budget priorities, how they were developed, in my opinion. It also really goes against our mission and vision for our district. And when we talk about empowering each learner to reach their full potential, how are our Spanish immersion students supposed to reach their full potential if we don't have a middle school program to support them? So again, you're looking at $595,000. Director Cawthorn, thank you for that information on the ADM that you shared, but we still do have 49.5 ADM for administrative assistance, which I was speaking to somebody in the community. This had a lot of conversations in the community this weekend, and it was referenced that our local hospital has about 1,000 employees, and they, from an administrative staff, they have 3.5 administrative assistants. You said we have 1,000 employees, and we have 49.5. So I just think if you're looking at $595,000, I think we have to look to administration to see where can we run and where can we be more efficient within our administrative staff. So, thank you.
Director Olstad?
This has been discussed over and over again about the administrative assistants and anything considered administration, and I would like that brought up again, because that's not accurate. It's not accurate.
That's not even close.
We're not talking about hospitals here. We're talking about schools.
You're right. Yes, Director Smith. And hospitals don't cut surgeons and nurses. They
Board
are the
members,
heartbeat. They're
board
the
members.
heartbeat.
Come on, come on, come on.
Board members, we need
decorum,
to-
please.
we
a
do-
hospital.
We do need to maintain decorum.
Thank you.
Yep, we do need to maintain decorum. And we also need to protect public record. We need to protect the public record, and bringing in hospitals or other things, that is not what our administration is tasked to bring the board the recommendations.
Correct.
The board is tasked.
I'm well aware of my
with-
role, Director Bullion. We don't need to waste time on that. Thank you.
Director Atkinson, the board is tasked with asking questions and not to argue the recommendations being brought forward. It's to discuss amongst each other. This is a study session that we are to ask questions to the given administrators and clarifying questions for what the recommendations are being brought forward. And then when it comes time, when we have to make a vote, our vote will decide whether the district recommendations are agreed upon by the board or they're not. So with that being said, is there any other questions on this particular bucket? Director Smith?
Yeah, I just want to make a couple of comments here. Because when we talk about the last levy and that proposal, since it was brought up, the district made clear what would follow if that levy had failed. it listed the programs that would be at risk. Spanish immersion, being limited to K through 5, was one of those options. Secondary electives being reduced. Middle school activities being eliminated. And at the time, those warnings and those facts were called scare tactics. They were called fear-mongering. And I think it is, if we want to talk about irony, I think it's quite ironic that we as a board seem that can be absolved of how we helped create this mess. Because we have a part in this too. And we can't just say that the district is doing bad by our community, because we are as well. And like many folks who have emailed and spoken tonight, I am devastated by what is being proposed. I have read every single email that has come in on behalf of the choir, on behalf of Spanish. And if I could read each one of those emails into the public record tonight and take that time, I would. From my perspective, we as a board, we are part of this situation. We have helped create these circumstances. It has been said repeatedly that we are the what and the why, and the superintendent and his team are the how. For quite some time now, what this board has been is chaos. As for why, I wish I knew. I'm not sure if it's ego, mistrust of public education, personal vendettas or grievances, or a genuine misunderstanding of how schools operate. We have board members publicly tell this community that the district mismanages money, that teachers are pushing agendas, that the superintendent is punishing families. That is what misinformation looks like, and that is what has been eroding community confidence in this district. And those claims are not supported by the financial record or the evidence this board has been presented. But they have consequences. A community that has been told repeatedly that its schools cannot be trusted is a community that votes no. So, again, there are families in this room tonight, and that's not a coincidence. That is the record, and that is the circumstances that we have helped create. Students and families are being devastated by these decisions, are exactly who I am thinking about when I say we need to do better as a board. And I know if there are ways to rebuild it, it's going to take a lot. It's going to take years. But the kids in our district right now are the ones being hurt. The kids going to school today, my kids, people in this room who have kids, and I don't understand why. I just don't. That's all.
Director Mason.
Thank you. Since we have gotten on the topic of headcount, I guess, one comment on that, Director Cawthorn, I had asked for the data behind that after, I think you raised it at one of the last meetings. And I think, I appreciate that the numbers are the same, right? But I think when you dig into the details of some of that, it matters. So, for example, when you look at the headcount being the same, I believe that's like a total FTE, correct? Some of those people might be hourly Kids Co employees, some of them are salaried at different levels, like that information matters. So I appreciate that we're kind of holistically saying we have the same number or 33 more or whatever it was that you just said, staff members, but that's a total FTE, correct?
No, it's not FTE because I was looking at total bodies.
Right.
So
Total
an
bodies.
FTE could be a 0.8 FTE or
Right,
something
total
like
bodies,
that. Yeah,
agree.
total bodies, yes.
Right, and so when I dug into that, just as an example, and I think it was 2617 that we looked at, there were like 36 more Kids Co bodies. Kids Co bodies are probably part-time, not salaried employees versus, now there might be their bodies elsewhere. So I appreciate that information, but I think, the devil's in the details, so everybody needs to understand that. Like, we haven't done a holistically, deep dive into the head count, which is what I had requested many times. And I think that's difficult to follow.
And I think the disaggregation that has come up quite a bit is around administration and administrative assistants.
but just
And
generally.
so, this is why we brought that information for you this evening, because that's the contentious area, it seems, of conversation. And so we did pull that out separately for you this evening so you can understand the comparison and owned the fact of the 3 administrators that are above from 10 years ago and the rationale as to why, and that we will actually be down in administrative assistants to where we were 10 years ago as well. So I just want to just reiterate that and not let that get lost in the comment of total headcount when in the areas that mattered, we tried to pull out.
And I appreciate that. I think it's just important to recognize that those numbers aren't apples to apples, right? And so we all know that. I think, the other thing is we did make close to $3 million in new investment positions just 2 years ago, and several of them in the middle school for student support staff. I mean, we have new investments in this district that were just made with extra COVID funding, I believe, in 23, 24, that are still there. So we didn't have those in 16, 17. Like, I think, I'm not going to sit here and tell you what positions you need and you don't need, but we are just asking to explore other alternatives versus classroom teachers, and especially Spanish immersion classroom teachers in this case. That's my ask.
Well, and I
think that the ask is heard, right? It's something that's been, brought up and asked on many different occasions. And I think that as board members, we also have to be extremely mindful that what the district team brings forward, they're the ones in the buildings. They're dealing with the building administration, the building staff, and they're dealing with the needs of the students. And so while as board members, we're doing our due diligence and trying to decipher information and making sure that we are operating at the strongest possible governance level that we can, it's challenging as a board member to understand all of the things that our district staff understands. So when they're bringing forth a recommendation and their recommendations are met with, a lot of questions that, there's so many different layers, whether it be mandates, students' needs, staff things. There's just a lot of things to go into it. And so being aligned in our governance role is really important. And I think that's just one thing that I want to mention, because it's when the district staff is bringing forth their recommendations, we can ask clarifying questions and do all the things and share our opinions and our thought processes for the district staff to go back into their meetings and look at different options. And if their recommendations based on new perceptions or new ways to think about things that come from the board, from our community inputs and our inputs that we have with staff and families, then they take that back into those meetings, and if there's adjustments made to recommendations, they do that. And so, yeah, that's what I wanted to say on that. Is there any board members that haven't spoken on this particular bucket want to say anything? Because then I would like to move forward to the next bucket.
I believe Director Atkinson, did you have a
Yeah,
question?
I do actually have a point, and I just want to respond to, I think it's only fair for me to comment about Director Smith. You've been here, this is your 4 or 5 months on the board, and.
That's irrelevant.
And, well, no, it's not. You add a lot of value, and I really appreciate you being here, so thank you. But what is not, what probably you don't have visibility to, and I was one of the first person that approached you in
Is
the
this
audience.
really a conversation that we need to have at the board table right now?
It's relevant. So when we developed as a
I
board.
don't think it is. I think you and I can have this offline. I think we want to move on with what we're here to talk
It
about,
has to
please.
do with the levy, if the levy
Director
didn't pass.
Atkinson, does it have to do
Yes, it does,
with
actually.
this bucket?
Yes, it does. Yes. So one of the things is, if the levy didn't pass, one of the things that was brought up is we would reduce K through 5 iPad technology. I don't see that anywhere on these budget cuts. And so I personally would like to see what does that, and ironically, when we went to this town hall meetings, that was something that was elevated, and we continued to hear from our community, was reduce technology, get back to pen and paper, and we heard it over and over again. In fact, it was even in our recap that we heard just last month. And so I would really challenge, like to see the administration go back and see what is the cost to do that? Because it's something that we heard from our community, it's something that was on the list of if the levy didn't pass. And so I think that rather than some of these teacher cuts, I think I would like to see us look at what does that technology cut look like when we bring forth the next recommendation.
Just a point of clarification, Director Atkinson, the specificity on a grade band of iPad reduction was never on that list.
It was on the list.
I'm looking at the list right now, and it says reduce student access to educational technology, but there's no specificity as to what grade band or anything that,
So-
would be.
I went and looked at the levy, I searched it on our website, and then you go under what happens if it doesn't pass?
I'm on it. Impact.
looking at it right now.
I'm looking at it right
And
now.
that is
But I
not
just-
information
I-
that's in our current board packet. So it may be a conversation for offline. I think that the comment is noted about technology. It has been shared at other board, since our town halls have concluded that,
And some technology has been reduced as a result of that.
that comment has been,
Correct, kindergarten.
has been noted.
First.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, moving on to the high school bucket. I don't know what director is, Mr. Thomas.
What's that?
Who's going to, is there any?
No, it's just.
Oh, we've already went over it, we're just
Yeah.
discussing it.
Yeah,
Other
is there-
questions?
Oh, sorry.
I have a couple of questions.
All right. Director Olsted.
When it comes to, I'm curious about, can you talk to enrollment in MinCaps, choir? There's a foreign language one that says due to numbers reduction, choir reduction due to student counts, and then MinCaps. I just made the assumption, but correct me if that's not the right assumption, about enrollment for MinCaps. So I just,
Sure.
I
we'll,
don't mean to put you on the spot with like exact numbers, but even generalities I think would help.
Sure, Dr. Bezick will talk about some of the
Sure, I'd be happy
registration and enrollment.
Thank you, Dr. Beasley.
Yeah, no problem. You want me to start going down the list here? If I'm looking at MinCaps, well, just overall, I mean, we've been in cut mode for a while. I mean, our class size keeps creeping up and up, and I've been, when you're trying to start new programs, you're trying to sometimes get things off the ground, you sometimes run things at a little lower number. But we're getting to a critical stage here where I can't keep floating these lower enrollment courses at the expense of my core subjects. So I've had to make some tough decisions and look at what are my average class sizes, and we have a guideline that we try to run nothing under 20, and sometimes we hit that, sometimes things pop under that. And when I was looking at some of the MinCaps enrollments, I had some, and part of the great thing about MinCaps is you have that you're collaborating, you're teaching, you have people working together. But that also means that if I have my ed pathway that is on the list here, I had 25 students. Now that sounds great, but I have 2 teachers teaching those 25 students. So that's really an average class size of, 12 and a half? So how can I run that when my average class size is getting up now near 34, 35? I just can't. So I'm having to make these decisions that are kind of ripping my heart out as well, because I feel like we're, a lot of great things that we've been doing, I don't want to be in the stage of my career dismantling programs, because we're all about giving opportunities for kids. But I have to balance that out, so it is, making the, choosing between good and good, we've heard that over and over again. To tweak some of that, I was able to the trades pathway too, we've been trying to build that up. We had 3 teachers, so I had, let's say 50 kids in there with 3 teachers, well, that's a low number as well. So I was able to reshuffle that into a 2-hour pathway because the key parts are the math and the construction working together. And we were able to take the English portion out of that, and now I can make that a 2-hour pathway, which is closer to, 25 kids instead of it being, under the 20 number. So I was just trying to do things to make things more efficient, because my other teachers are looking around going, geez, my class numbers are creeping up, and why is that class being offered at such a low number? So, I've had to make some tough decisions. Some, just a tweak, some pathways we're making a decision to eliminate. So that would be the answer on, something like that in MinCaps. Now, the business pathway and the healthcare pathway are going gangbusters. We're adding kids, hand over fist. I think we're going to add a 60 more this year to the healthcare pathway. So, we've got a lot of good things going on too. So, and every year I have variance in electives. Even in a good year when we're not cutting, I have, the low-end courses are going to be enough to offer enough sections of that. So there's always some variance in the bottom person in every department. They're always kind of wondering, are they going to be cut or are we going to add back? There's always a little bit of that. It's just that this year there's more angst because we're making an 8 reduction. And an 8 reduction doesn't come across as an 8 reduction. It came to me having to have 16 conversations with people because maybe it's a 0.2 in this program, maybe it's a 0.4 in this program, or maybe it's not even somebody in my building, it's somebody in Joe's building that he had to cut. But since he's got I've got the least senior teachers, my person's getting bumped out. So just a lot of uncomfortable conversations. It was a tough week last week for all of us, for teachers and administration around the district having those conversations. So, yeah, it hurts. It's frustrating. And, we're trying to make the best of a, sour situation. Do you want me to go on to choir? The die was kind of cast, I don't want to lose choir. I don't want to cut a program that's a Cadillac program, but we're working on a Chevy Malibu budget here. How am I supposed to, when we were on a 7-period day, I go around, I look at comparison high schools. Most schools that are on a 6-period day, you're reducing elective opportunities for kids. You have less choices. And most of the schools in our conference that are on a 7-period day have 2 choir teachers, have about 300 choir kids. The ones, Lakeville, that is on a 6, has 1 choir teacher. Because their numbers are closer to ours, because kids don't have as much access. I did the same thing in South Washington County. I looked at those because I know they were on a 6-period day as well. So I'm calling around and I'm asking. I looked at back when we went to we were on a 7-period day before I got here, I think around 2011, 2012, doesn't really matter. But when that change was made, the choir enrollment was around 300. Now it's around 150. So do I want to bring that forward? Have I known this for a couple of years and have I kind of stayed away from that? Because obviously the community has valued that program. But now we're starting to have to make decisions on, and it stinks. I don't want to say what do we value more, but I have to make some decisions. And I'm sure we're going to get feedback to see is that going to stand where it stands or what are we going to do? I'm looking for answers. And, I'm comparing what we got compared to surrounding high schools, and I'm like, I don't know how the heck I'm going to be able to keep up this staffing game. I'm at 34 probably next year across the board average class size. That means some are higher, some are lower. Those school districts that I hear about that are pushing near 40, we're that district. Almost nobody is lower funded by their local operating levy than us. We're that place. So when I hear these people saying, how can this be? Real easy. We're not keeping pace. We were lucky. We were, in my opinion, probably living off growth for a long period of time. Now we're not. The growth isn't there, and now it's affecting us. We got great facilities. We got people that want to support a lot of our things, but I don't know. I'm going too far off on that. That's not my role to talk about the community and their appetite to support things. What else do you want to know about? What other reductions am I making? If there's a specific one that you'd want to know about, I'd be happy to talk about it. Everything up there, like, some paraprofessionals, we're looking at our testing center, the middle school cut theirs a couple of years ago. Core instruction, that just means I'm moving things across, the 4 core departments. Every time I cut the core department by 1 person, it adds about a 2-person bump in class size. So, if you were to say, hey, what would it take to get you back to a 32 class size? I'd say, well, it'd take me 4 FTE. Or what would it take to get you to 30? I'd say it'd take me 8 FTE. And that's just in the core, you know what I mean? And I got an 8 hit last year, I'm getting an 8 hit this year. And when I talk to people, they're like, oh my God, you're cutting 16 people out of that building in 2 years? It's getting tough. It's getting, so yeah, that's just our reality. But we're still doing good things. People are taking on more. That's just the world we're living in. Other elective sections, yeah, I mean, that's probably a little misleading because I feel like I've hit them more than 0.4, but it might have been in min caps, it might have been in other areas, but actually some areas might have grown as well. Even in times of cutting, some are, gaining, so it probably offset there. Yeah, I'd like to think, I was a little skeptical when Rob and Lisa said, hey, we're gonna give you a dollar figure target. I'm like, I don't wanna play that game, I wanna play the FT game, because that's the game I've always played. Actually, made me cut a little less than I had to cut, so I guess I can thank you on that.
Any other questions for Dr. Beasley?
Yeah, what do you got for me?
Yeah, I mean, just a comment question. Obviously, the community and students have been very vocal about the choir
Yeah.
cut. I certainly would encourage you to seek other alternatives. But in the same breath, I do think, it's unfortunate that the cuts in December 24 that reduced our middle school elective alternatives, which are obviously a direct feeder to the high school, where, kids aren't able to take both music, choir or band, and a language in 7th and 8th grade like they used to. So probably many are choosing to take the language over choir, and so that number will continue to probably go down. If you look at the middle school numbers, they're very low for choir. So while I think it'd be great to keep choir in high school, and I would recommend that, I also, I'd be concerned, again, it just kind of goes back to the core of the issue in middle school, really, right? I mean, it seems like the numbers are low there, too. I don't know.
Prior to the middle school being adjusted, though, to Dr. Beasley's point, this trend, as we've,
Is that ready?
that 6-period day was the beginning to this reality. And again, checking across the conference, that is the average on the 6th period.
Did the high school, move to 6th period with the middle school and
All same.
at the same time? Okay, that's right.
Reason to do that is just it's simple math. It's the cheapest schedule. So
Right.
it's 83% efficient. A 7-period day is 71% efficient. So you're able to make a budget cut of, let's say 11% of your staff without affecting class size. So that's why people do it. It's not, so if we wanted, sometimes I hear talk about, let's go to a 7-period day. Well, I got 2 things. First, I need to get the 12 FTE back to get my enrollment at a decent number. Then I need the additional 12 FTE to get my 7-period day back. So I don't think people realize how big of a hole we are in.
And sorry, so that choir instructor will be remaining and going to the middle school and sharing, or what? I didn't understand the full.
Yeah,
plan. Sorry.
I believe that person, based on seniority, the person bumps down to the middle school position, yes. And then I think somebody shifting to the elementary, there's a lot of moving parts there.
Well, the staffing responsibilities are for the district. I mean, I think just reminding the board, the governance responsibilities compared to the staff, the district responsibilities, which is the day-to-day operations and the staffing. And we just need to keep that on the forefront of our mind when we're discussing all of these very difficult cuts that are in front of us. Director Johnson?
So I have more of a clarifying. So with MinCaps, you are eliminating education altogether.
Yes.
And then reducing the total,
The trades pathway is going from a 3-hour pathway to a 2-hour pathway,
okay.
so
And
the tweak there.
with education, you said you've got 2 instructors there now?
Yep, because I had a social studies and an English teacher that were co-teaching that group. And we had, I think next year we had like 15 year 1 students sign up and 11 year 2 students sign up, so a total of 25 students for 2 teachers. And actually, I think one of them might have been teaching 3 hours, so it was a lot of FTE for that program. I think there are some opportunities to do something that our FACS program also has like an early childhood program, and I think there's some opportunity to grow that into a path, to regrow that pathway. I think there's another way to do it, maybe a little more efficiently, because just the numbers, and it's a good thing. I don't want to, every time I feel like I'm at risk, I don't want to insult people when I'm talking about, making these choices and saying, hey, maybe they could do it this way or do it that way, but I also know that, some of those other pathways, you're getting an opportunity to see these careers that you don't normally see. And I don't want to belittle the education pathway, but they do get to see school, they've experienced it. While I feel bad, I'm like, we can do this, we need to, and again, none of these are easy to remove, but that's when I'm like going, I just can't at that number. How can I look at my other teachers and their courses and go, yeah, they go, because I need trust with my staff that I'm making. Everybody's looking, when things get a little tight, everybody's looking, are you making the best decisions? It's the trust, it's the this, and it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good when somebody asks, hey, what are you doing with the bids or this or that? What's going on here or that? All that. Your reaction is, well, don't you trust me? Well, I guess we got to earn that, and we got to, try and talk about it. And I'm trying to be transparent with them when I'm having these conversations, and this is why we're doing what we're doing. But it doesn't mean it doesn't hurt, and doesn't mean that people don't feel, everybody thinks of it, it's all a little bit of a value judgment. Even though when we say it's this, we got to make one decision over another. And
Sure. Within the early childhood, phenomenal class. My daughter's in it now, so I think that's.
Get the FACS classroom, yeah.
I think that,
It does a nice class, yeah.
yeah. And then as far as the trades go, are we losing any trade pathways as a
No,
whole?
not at all. The
Okay.
piece we're losing, and I don't want to dismiss this though, because it is a big piece, but we've had an English teacher working in there, so they would talk, do some of the, how do you write up a budgeting proposal, and how do you do the interviewing skills and all that. So those kids will still be taking their English somewhere else, but, can the math and the business teacher pick up some of those pieces that are, they used to do it all together over 3 periods, so, but for sake of efficiency to say, hey, I feel better at having a 25 average in there than a under 20 average in there. That was just and I felt that of the core pieces, the math and the construction piece together, because that's, how do you practically use math?
Thank you for your clarification.
Yeah.
Director Atkinson?
Thank you. So I have a question. If you're looking at our policy that says 20
Yep.
is the minimum class size to be able to offer an elective.
Yeah.
I happened to look at the 25, 26 enrollment, and there was about 12 electives that we were under
Yeah,
that cap size. And
I
so
think I saw
my-
that
Yeah,
sheet.
so my question is, of all these cuts, how many are that policy?
Yeah.
I'm just curious, because I don't.
The trades one was, the education pathway was. Again, I want to be careful with the choir one. They've got some real low enrollment pieces, the way they're doing things, so some of theirs could be in that as well. And some of that list that you're on, sometimes because I was looking through some of those as well, and sometimes you'll see we keep the course number for a course. Like there was two AP courses, I think there was a 10 and a 15. Well, I rolled those together. The teacher said I could teach those both. I can have 25 kids doing two different courses in that hour. Or there were some that are like really low enrollment that there's a couple classes at the
Co-op?
co-op, thank you, like the cosmetology. We don't even teach cosmetology, but I
Right, I
got three
saw
kids
that.
that are going over there.
CSC,
Yep, so some of that, and then there's always well, if they register, if 23 kids register for it, it's over the 20. Well, I know a lot of times that if it's a singleton course, then only 23 kids register for that. Those kids might have such a tight schedule that they have another low enrollment course, so they're gonna have to make a choice. So if it drops to 18 or 19, then it's under was I not supposed to run it? So that's why sometimes you'll see an 18 or a 19 and then there are a couple of those courses were concept courses, which we ran, it's kind of a lower level, more of a targeted intervention program for kids in physics and chemistry.
no,
So when you see the concepts courses, so those were the ones that were listed. So
Those were- I
there's
thought
those were some of the reasons why it's
I'm
not
just
an
trying to
exact
understand.
science.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand how much of that is actually part of your budget. First of all, I don't even think you should have had to absorb or, be part of these budget cuts, given what you had to, make the cuts you had to make last year. So, I think with the choir, I want to level set that though, because there's 186 students, I think, that were enrolled in choir last year. And my understanding is for those classes that are the 10, the Meister singers and some of the higher level choirs, that they actually try out for those. So that's not all the students. When you see a class of 10, my understanding is that they try out for those classes, is my understanding. The other thing that we can't
I
forget.
think they place all of them in some level, but they might move up to a higher level. But I think those
Mm-hmm.
kids are those kids. I don't think they say you're not gonna be in a choir.
Right, but it's meeting it's allowing those students to reach their full potential is what it is, right? And, I'm dumbfounded by that this cut is on the list. Our choir program also feeds into our theater program. And if you've ever been to a musical and they're sold out and they're phenomenal, thank you, Mr. Tuma, for being here tonight. The choir program feeds into our amazing theater program. So a reduction in the choir FTE will not only have a negative impact on our choir program, but will also impact our amazing theater program that we have today. So I guess I would challenge you to go back. I don't see any administrative cuts on here. And I think anybody can go to our ASMO budget book and pull up FTE by building, and they can see all the administrative support. And it's not just administrative assistants, it's anywhere from assistant principals to, the list goes on and on. Unless they're not listed as a teacher.
I'd love to have a comparison of any of we're in top 6 high school in the state in terms of enrollment. I'd love to have a comparison of how I stack up, because I look at those as well. And I cut an assistant principal 2 years ago, and I cut a director of MinCaps, and because we brought that program back in-house.
Right, I understand.
So cut those in the last 2 years as well, and along with that, two secretaries, so. But yes, I get it, I get that eyes are on us. I don't want to be sitting here in some ivory tower and saying, everybody but me, or that.
Thank you.
Director France?
First of all, I appreciate the pain that the leadership went through in trying to come up with this list. This is unfortunate. It would have been unnecessary had we did have a levy, and hopefully we will get one eventually. But I want to go back to a couple of things. You made a comment that the choir program was almost double when we had a 7-period day. And I think part of the issue is that 6-period day. Because with the electives and with some of the programs that really do enhance the overall holistic educational experience that feeds into everything else, they can't fit it in their schedule because of the way the schedules are, because they only have one free elective period or whatever, and it doesn't line up, right? So I want to recognize that. But the other thing that I think is worth mentioning is that our entire arts, band, and choir program has been living on a shoestring budget, and they've been also surviving mostly through parent volunteers, donations, and fundraisers. So they couldn't afford even the slightest reduction and, you know, without having to make it up in some other way. The fact that it's done just so incredibly well, and the reputation of the program is known statewide, if not nationally, even at universities that I've spoken to, is a testament to all the hard work. And it's heartbreaking that this is happening. It's heartbreaking we have to do it. It's heartbreaking that it falls within those statistics. And I just wanted to recognize the fact that it was as good as it was also because of the volunteers and the donations and the fundraisers that the students did between band and theater and everything like that. And that's a shame that it had to actually survive on that also.
It is, and it's a shame because boosters should be for, in my mind, boosters should be for extras, those things to, you know, accentuate the program, not covering the basics. And I feel like we're getting in a dangerous spot where also we're allowing people to buy their way out of the cuts that they don't like.
Yeah, that's not.
And that's not what public education is.
Thank you.
Any other board members on this one? Thank you, Dr. Bezick. Next bucket is athletics and activities. Do we have any questions or comments on that bucket? Director Johnson?
Director Marshall here.
No, he is at the state conference for athletic directors currently. So he apologizes that he could not be here, but yes, we can speak to maybe some questions.
Fine, I'll ask him directly. So
Perfect.
That works for me.
Anyone else?
I just wanted a clarifying question. When we talk about the baseball stipend, the stipend from Nordic Ski, et cetera, that's the stipend of the contribution from the district in addition to,
It's for the coach itself.
For the coaches,
It's actually
okay.
for the coach.
Yep.
So the baseball registration is down, and so reducing the stipend for a coach.
okay, okay, thank you for that clarification. That's kind of where my next question was going.
Anyone else? Hearing none, we'll move on to the alignment buckets. Is that what we're doing? Is that our last bucket? All right.
See?
I'm sorry, what was that?
DSC?
Yep, the DSE. Yep. Board members, comments, questions, clarifying questions on this bucket?
Yeah, I just
Director
had a-
Mason?
Yeah, question on the special ed retirement. What, I'm just curious what role that was, and I think you had mentioned like net savings on this, and like how are we replacing that role?
So as people reach that point in their career where they are considering retirement, typically they're at a top end of the scale. And so,
Special ed teaching staff?
yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so the combination of the retirements that have been listed under the special education team, and then netting from that, what we know or anticipate that cost to replace will be, that's the net difference.
Thank you for that
Yes.
clarification.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Director
No,
Johnson?
no, you go ahead.
I know our goal as far as the transportation RFP is savings. But seeing as we don't have that, can we actually calculate that in here?
I see your point there. The 100,000 is what I had considered a safer number, given the fact that as we take a look at the closure and the consolidation of buildings and such, I mean, a route currently is around 76,000. So that's looking at like 1.5 routes that we'd be trying to save, and I'm anticipating that that's something we can achieve. And from my perspective, it's kind of tied directly to the whole process of consolidation.
Thank you.
Who's next? Go on to the next
Um,
bucket.
I'm happy to add a couple things. You know, this is the slide that probably concerned me the most. I mean, with the move to Grainwood, I would have thought this is where we would have seen the administrative and the central staff cuts. And I've spoken to some other districts that have also faced difficult decisions, and many have taken significant steps to reduce administration and central office expenses. And while those choices are difficult, and I understand that, those districts continue to operate very efficiently with little impact on students. And so I just wanted to share that because this was the bucket, this was the one that I would have thought that we would have seen a bigger reduction in reductions. So rather than cutting teachers and student programs, which I believe is completely counter to our strategic plan of educating all learners, I would challenge us to go back and really look at our administration and our central office staff to see if there's any other efficiencies that can be created within this bucket.
Anyone else? Next bucket, the revenue and compensatory adjustments. Is there any questions or clarifications needed on the information presented? Director France?
Yes, I would like to, I've been following this quite a bit too, and I believe the compensatory discussion, and I see the word plea in here, and it's quite scary about the grandfathering for only one more year and what they're thinking about doing with it. Knowing that these cuts are going to continue, and as Dr. Thomas has put it, you know, we stopped cutting off a few unnecessary appendages that we could live without, and through like maybe 2024, even though we like our big toe and a few other things, we're now cutting into bone and muscle and actually chopping off arms. If this comes to play, if the changes that are being suggested to actually eliminate compensatory funding come to play, what would happen to us? Would we be forced into statutory operating debt yet a year earlier? I mean, what?
Well, at this point, I haven't myself heard that they're looking at eliminating compensatory. However, they are looking at the change in the role or the change in the calculation to be solely dependent upon the county direct certification of families who are free or reduced eligible. So even if you have families complete the application for educational benefits form, it will not change your compensatory calc, okay? So if families are going to the county and they are participating in the application process for those types of programs, and they're identified as either free or reduced under a direct certification, they will continue to be counted there. When you run our numbers based on just the direct cert numbers compared to what they were previously when there was a hold harmless, that's where the 161,834 is less.
Right.
So we're still looking at currently with our direct certs, that number being around 1.3 mil. Moving forward, if there's any change in families' tendency to complete that application process at the county level, and I know in my previous districts too, it was interesting because it's different in different communities, right? Different counties handle things differently, people review it differently depending upon where you are in the state. And so this is a tricky one because one of the things that this particular task force is looking at is what's the proper connection to really, like the students that are being served by compensatory revenue, are they really our free and reduced eligible students? Is that a proper, connection to make? Good question. One of the things on their survey they sent out to MASBO members was, is it more important that you have stable funding How important is it that you have the hold harmless for 27? Those kinds of questions, right, is what we're being asked. And so I know they're taking a look at a number of things. The challenge is, like we are doing, the state's doing the same thing when it comes to our special education funding as well as our compensatory funding. Those are two task forces that are in the works right now in trying to find ways to reduce costs in one case, and in another case, find a proper formula that's going to be sustainable.
I misspoke. I meant to say eliminate the hold harmless past 27.
Okay, sorry.
So, yeah, but with everything being kind of pushed down to the counties,
Yep.
and, and the county's still working on a manual green screen program, and the poverty level has not changed, meaning that we're still not going to service the families and the students that truly need it. And then the lack of incentive to fill out the free and reduced lunch forms because it's free. That just sounds like we're going to pretty much lose it.
Yeah, no, I see your point. It's a tricky one, yep.
Anyone else on this bucket?
Chair Bullion?
Yes.
As we wrap this up this evening, is it possible for us to get clear board direction on the different slides so that our admin has a clear understanding of what to move forward with and what perhaps there's challenges to go back and relook at?
So this evening, there will be no direction taken at the study session. We are going to, and Dr. Thomas, please, if I'm misspeaking, but the understanding is that there's no ask of the board tonight as far as direction, that we are receiving the recommendations that the district has brought forward as of this point, and all of our questions and our discussion points, our opinions will be taken back tomorrow and in subsequent days before. And if there are changes to recommendations, those will come forward. But if I missed anything or
I think you
misspoke,
recapped how I opened up.
so there will be no direction in this study session portion, just the chance to ask questions, give opinions, give thoughts, and allow the district staff to do you have something to share, Dr.
Madam Chair,
Anderson?
thank you. Just a point of emphasis and recognition for the difficult situation that we're in. I heard Dr. Busick talk about, do people realize how difficult the situation is that we're in? And I think that's an important point. And this hasn't been easy work to do. And so none of us as educators go into the field wanting to do this work. It isn't the work we want to do. None of us in this system, on the employment level, chose to be in the situation that we're in. I'm seeing heroic work from educators in this system every day. These conditions are as difficult as any conditions. So I know governance isn't easy either. We have a unique community. We're listening to our community stakeholders. That's super important. But this is a pretty hard situation that we find ourselves in. The hardest I've seen in 29 years by far. And this is the third year of this thing happening where we've had to cut. So nobody wants to cut choir. That hurts our hearts. Nobody wants to cut Spanish immersion. My own two children went through French immersion, and it's a lifelong, glorious benefit. None of these cuts are brought up, willy-nilly or arbitrarily. They're a function of the conditions we find ourselves in. These are terrible conditions for a community to have to operate a school district out of. That's my professional opinion. And these principals have been sitting in weeks and weeks of meetings having difficult conversations with folks that they don't want to have, doing heroic work. Have they brought the perfect list? I don't know if there's a perfect list given our conditions, but they've done incredible work.
They're doing incredible work. We're still doing incredible things every day. People are working their tails off. It's impressive. I just want to give a nod to the principals who not only came tonight, but have done this heroic work and collaborated to try to figure out how to solve this puzzle. This is a difficult scenario that we find ourselves in. Nobody wants this. We want the best for our kids. We want to educate them in a world-class way. The conditions that we have now are a headwind into getting that done. So we're working our tails off. This group is working super hard. It's hard to figure out what to do. I'm sure they'll do the same thing they've been doing, which is to take this feedback, think about what's possible, and try to come back with whatever puzzle they can solve to serve as many kids as well as they can. But we're cutting good things. We're cutting great things. That's what we have to do with these conditions. So I'm hopeful that over time we can make governance decisions and as a system can continue to think about ways to update the conditions so that we don't have to do things like this. But thank you to the principals who are here tonight and to our whole roster of leaders in this system who are working their tails off, and it's a pretty difficult, tall order. So thank you for the moment.
Thank you.
you, Dr.
Thank you
Anderson.
for taking the moment, Dr. Anderson, because it is very important that the board, hears what you're saying, remembers what we're saying. The board, board members, we are brand ambassadors for this district. None of us have easy roles in this cutting scenario. And so I thank you for that comment, Dr. Anderson. With that being said, I think that concludes that portion of our, the staffing and budget adjustment. We will move on to the single federal audit report. Director Ryder, thank you.
Let me find the right report here, one moment. To hover. I think it's just in your board packet.
Can we take a break? We're gonna take a break. We're gonna just take a 5-minute restroom, get a drink, and then we'll move on.
Okay.